If the Miami Heat are going to move on from Terry Rozier before his contract expires, it's apparently going to cost them. In his latest mailbag for the Sun-Sentinel, Ira Winderman was asked if he could see another NBA team taking on the 31-year-old's $26.4 million straight up, without the inclusion of anything else. His answer is not what Heat fans will want to read or hear. Based on last season's performance and the outside swirl regarding Terry Rozier, I can't see any takers without a sweetener, writes Winderman. And I can't see the Heat adding a sweetener when they already send out a first-round pick for Terry that is coming due in 2027 or 28. Basically, with Miami seemingly prioritizing future flexibility over any serious moves now, it's starting to sound like Rozier won't be going anywhere, at least not anytime soon. Terry Rozier is not immovable, but, to be sure, this is not a situation in which the Heat absolutely won't be able to trade Rozier. Expiring contracts, in particular, can always be rerouted. Doing so without including a first-round pick, though, will almost assuredly require Miami taking back another player owed money beyond the 2025-26 season. That profiles as a no-go for the front office. The Heat could blow past $30 million in cap space next summer if Andrew Wiggins declines his player option, and have already surrendered some of their projected spending power by giving Davion Mitchell 2 guaranteed years on his current contract. Now, Rozier could also be used as the primary salary matching tool in a blockbuster swing by Miami. But this is predicated on the market-yielding targets who are worth the Heat expediting their timeline and nuking their long-term flexibility during the middle of the season. We know they are monitoring Giannis Antetokounmpo like it's their full-time job, and he is definitely worth forking over any other assets they can dangle. The list gets dicey after him, in part because there are no obvious candidates. Is Jaylen Brown good enough for the Heat to act? What about LaMelo Ball? Or, how about Kobe White? Is there a surprise star trade target Miami is circling like a vulture we don't yet know about? Expiring contracts aren't as easy to trade as they used to be. The other variable at play here is the decline in value of expiring contracts overall. Sure, they can be ultra-appealing when included in star packages, where the team at the other end is presumably looking to start over. Beyond that, though, they have lost their luster. Blame the relative death of NBA free agency for that. Teams are no longer itching to position themselves for future cap space. Miami is among the few markets that can still get away with making it a priority, and even the Heat have to admit stars hardly ever reach free agency anymore, let alone leave for nothing once they do. Look at what happened with DeAndre Ayton and Marcus Smart. Their teams let them broker a buyout rather than attempt to flip them for additional value prior to February's trade deadline. These departures never would have unfolded like this in the past, months before the regular season tips off. This same problem applies to Rozier. Even if he has a bounce-back year, his contract will never be considered valuable. So if the Heat want to get rid of him, they will have to expand the deal to include other assets, or submit to negotiating a buyout of their own. In many ways, the Miami Heat has been a pillar of success in the NBA over the last 30 years. That doesn't mean they haven't made a misstep here and there. Looking back over their recent history, there are a few specific players who just didn't mesh well with the organization. By proxy, the fan base came to grow frustrated with them. For some, it goes beyond frustration and develops into downright hate. Reflecting on a few of those instances, we explore 3 players who would probably never be welcomed back by the fan base. Kyle Lowry. Throughout his 2.5 seasons with the Heat, I'm not sure there was any moment in which Kyle Lowry felt all that comfortable. The Heat acquired him via a sign-and trade with the hope that he could emerge as a potential final piece of the championship puzzle for the team. It just didn't work out as either side had hoped. All that said, Lowry did play a key role in the team's run to the NBA Finals in 2023. He doesn't nearly get as much credit for that, but the Heat don't make it that far without his contributions, especially coming up big for the team at key moments in their postseason run. Still, the fan base had an unhealthy relationship with Lowry and were begging the front office to trade him. Funny enough, the Heat traded Lowry as part of a move that would end up being an even worse one for the franchise. It's safe to say Lowry wouldn't be welcomed all that much in the eyes of Heat fans. Hassan Whiteside. In modern Heat history, there may not be a player more disliked than Hassan Whiteside. It's a shame because for the first year and a half of his Heat tenure, he was a pretty beloved player. Everything changed as soon as expectations of a huge contract entered the picture. It also doesn't help that many Heat fans identify the Whiteside $100 million re-signing with Dwayne Wade leaving. Those two things happened in the same offseason. I wouldn't say the Heat chose Whiteside over Wade, but that contract certainly helped lead to his eventual departure for Miami. Whiteside went from being a lovable underdog story to a player who was drastically underperforming. By the end of his tenure with the Heat, Whiteside was considered to have one of the worst contracts in the sport. Jimmy Butler. I don't think anyone would argue with the fact that Jimmy Butler is going to go down as one of the best Heat players in modern history. What he was able to accomplish, even without a title, during his 5 full seasons with the Heat is nothing short of remarkable. However, on the other hand, Jimmy did quit on the team. Even if you believe the front office was wrong for how they treated Jimmy down the stretch, his actions were equally as bad, if not worse. Maybe this is a sentiment that changes down the road, but it's difficult not to hold at least some grudge against Jimmy with the way he acted during his final season with the Heat. I suppose it's not surprising considering his history, but it still doesn't make it any easier for the fan base to process. I'm sure there will be a time when the entirety of the fan base will appreciate those 5 years, but the ending was pretty bad. The Miami Heat quietly checked off a couple of helpful boxes during the 2025 NBA offseason, but they failed to find an instant impact floor general. That's a worry for a lot of reasons, but the biggest concern is what this glaring absence on the roster will, or more accurately won't, do for star center Bam Adebayo. Pair him with a high-end shot creator, and the possibilities could be endless. His finishing could perk up. His defense might grow even more disruptive since he'd be carrying a lighter offensive load. And if this floor general was a defense-bending sharpshooter from range, no one would bother worrying about whether Adebayo had finally harnessed his own outside shot or not. With the roster as is, though, Adebayo remains without a perfectly complementary co-star. And that just might keep him and this team from maxing out their potential. The Heat's problems at point guard will impact Adebayo the most. While the initial excitement surrounding the selection of Kasparas Jakiscionis shouldn't be thrown out the window, his rough showing at Summer League suggests he could face a steep learning curve while transitioning to this level. Davion Mitchell was great down the stretch last season, but he's a defense-first contributor who's never been regarded as anything close to an elite creator. Tyler Herro is a capable playmaker, but he's a scorer first and foremost. The less said about Terry Rozier, the better. As far as the point guard position goes, that's it. That's all Miami has stored away for the 2025-26 season. Maybe the right trade target surfaces at some point, but there's no guarantee that would happen, or even that Miami would place the winning bid if it did. The Heat seem locked in with these lead guards, and that can't make Adebayo feel great about his own outlook. He's a dominant defender who finishes with authority and makes good decisions with the basketball. He's not, however, a make-something-out-of-nothing type of creator. There isn't much self-sufficiency with his scoring. For his career, more than 63% of his two-pointers have been assisted per Basketball Reference. And all of that is fine. Or rather, it would be fine if Miami had a bona fide floor general leading the charge. The Heat haven't given him that, or anything close to it for that matter. When Adebayo has to fend for himself, his efficiency goes in the tank. You'd think someone with his size, strength, and athleticism would be unstoppable as a pick-and-roll screener, yet he was just a 32nd percentile scorer on those plays this past season, per NBA.com. That's an unforgivable number, and one that says just as much, if not more, about the players around Adebayo than it does about him. It's also looking like it'll once again be a weakness for the upcoming campaign, because Miami doesn't have a player who can obviously and consistently get him the ball in the right spots. He needs help on the offensive end, and the Heat could be kicking themselves for not providing it.